Most people treat this as an appearance package. I mean, it's got stitching, a lift, all-terrain tires, and a badge that hints at the aggression of the Raptor. The part they skip is the driveline, where Ford put the Raptor's front diff and transfer case and kept the V8 the Raptor walked away from. At about $82,000, the badge undersells the hardware. The question is, does anyone bother to look? The 5-liter V8 is naturally aspirated, and coming into 2026, it started to feel like a museum piece, but it seems like the world is healing and we're going to see more naturally aspirated V8s. There's no turbo lag because there's no turbo. You ask for some acceleration and it delivers exactly what you ask for without a wastegate negotiating on your behalf. And it's refreshing that in a full-size truck like this, linearity is the point. The Raptor went 3.5 EcoBoost and 5.2 supercharged, and somewhere in that math, Ford seems to have forgotten about the NAV8. Thankfully, they found a home for the Coyote here in the Tremor. Mash it from a stop, and acceleration just builds instead of delivering this wall of torque that you're cruising on because you've lit up a pair of turbos. And this is a 5,000-pound truck after all, so nobody's going to need a chiropractor after acceleration runs in this thing. But the best part is your right foot asks, the engine delivers, and there's no committee meeting in between. This is the same 5-liter Coyote that lives under the hood of a Mustang, but here you're hauling mulch with a sports car engine and the whole thing doesn't seem to mind. The V8 sounds like a V8 and it sounds wonderful, and it's in contrast to everything being turbocharged today when they all turbo themselves into sounding like kazoos. The 10-speed automatic is the same one Ford's been building for so many years, and I think it's got the best calibration yet, at least for this truck application. It seems perfectly suited to the task at hand. In normal mode, it just picks gears and is committed to the whole driving experience. Doesn't really hunt around the box. In sport mode, that does change throttle response as well as transmission mapping, so it holds gears a little bit longer. It's a little more eager to downshift and overall a little bit more sporting, but this is a full-size F-150, not a Mustang. Plus, you'd think with 10 speeds, you'd expect it to be busy, but it's not. It's a more relaxed driving experience. This is a truck transmission that has learned some manners. Yes, there are 10 forward gears here, and yes, most of these Tremors will be used for commuting. And if you're one of those drivers, you're going to be on a first-name basis with the 4 gears right in the middle. This Tremor has the 402A option package, and that is meaningful, my friends. When it comes to this driveline, this is something very important here, very revealing, and certainly something I learned. When you hit 4A, that means you're engaging the same high-lock transfer case that you find in the Raptor. You are not getting the lesser transfer case from the lower F-150 trims. Yes, this one's mechanical and does not use clutch packs. This is some legitimate hardware in the Tremor. And if you think about it, we've got a 5-liter naturally aspirated V8, the conventional but 10-speed automatic transmission, and a conventional driveline. And at the end of the day, it's not sophisticated, it's pretty boring, and from my perspective, boring lasts. I think you'll spend more time connecting your phone to this Tremor than you ever will in 4-low. And given how easily you can connect a phone to this thing and how often you'll actually use 4-low, I think that's pretty fair. I must have missed it in the spec sheet, but turns out that this Tremor has trail turn assist and it works wonderfully. It's one of those clever things that Ford can do between the hardware and the software and these modern off-roaders, and if you're stuck in a tight situation, that just makes a lot of sense. 5,000 pounds of Ford F-150 should not be this much fun. Subscribers get the next episode when it drops. Everybody else leaves it to the algorithm. If you want to find out when our next episode hits YouTube, well, that's what the subscribe button does. With this Tremor, the best thing Ford did was leave something out. The Raptor is wide because desert work rewards the extra width and the geometry to support the Raptor's additional suspension travel. That same wide bodywork that helps high-speed off-roading turns a tight parking situation into a geometry exam. The Tremor avoids all of that. It stays close enough to an F-150 that you can park it without needing a site survey. The steering's light and slow, and it's exactly what you'd expect from a half-ton full-size pickup. You want it to turn when you point it, and you want it to stop turning when you stop pointing it, and it does all of that. But with these all-terrains, there's a bit of vagueness on center, and I find that when I'm heading on a straight road, whether it's this back country road or the freeway, I'm always correcting just a little bit on center. And to be fair, I'd forgotten all about it because it's one of those things that you do forget. I was just reminded when I read my driving impression notes to share that with you guys. And for the mission of this Tremor, I'll gladly accept some of this on-center vagueness for the traction of these all-terrains. Some of the terrain I've passed through today would not have fit a Raptor in the least, so definitely a big check mark for the Tremor. On the other hand, this is still as long as a Raptor, and what that means is it doesn't matter whether this has a better turning radius than the Raptor, you're still going to need 3-point turns on 2-lane secondary roads. Monotube up front, twin tube dampers at the rear, and these are not the fancy Fox dampers that the Raptor uses. This is pretty off-the-shelf stuff, but I will say they do a fantastic job in terms of body and wheel control relative to this truck's mission. Yes, it's meant to go a little off-roading, and what that means in day-to-day driving, it's softly suspended, does a wonderful job of absorbing bumps, whether that's on or off-road. Decent job with body and wheel control on public roads as well. Then when it comes to off-roading, does a fine job there. However, what I do find with the suspension is on the road, when we're loaded in a corner, there is a lot of body roll here. I was surprised at how much body roll there is, but again, with a truck that has this much off-road capability, it's definitely what I should expect. You'd think that stopping an off-road oriented pickup would be an exercise in managing physics, but thankfully the brakes are strong here and this thing stops quickly. The brake pedal has excellent feel and modulation, and I can control the attitude of this truck with that brake pedal alone. It's a very strong, very positive brake pedal, and then when you need to stop this thing, it does stop relatively quickly, and full ABS stops are zero dramas. There's a dial full of terrain modes here, and your commute will use exactly one, and it's called normal. One thing I would like, and I may be incorrect, if I am, let me know in the comments, but I can't find a trail or off-road camera setting, so I can't get a low forward view from any of the cameras on this Tremor, and there were a couple of situations today where that would have been helpful. This is about as gnarly as it gets right here, and it is no dramas for this Tremor. That's even though we're on some very loose, very dry, very fine dirt. There's not a lot of traction, and as you'd expect, there's a little extra noise from these tires, and even here at whatever we're at 50 miles an hour, there is a little extra noise from these tires, but it's a small price to pay for the kind of off-road capability you get from these tires. Once I'm here, I'm very happy behind the wheel. Lots of adjustment in the steering column and the seat to find an effective seating position. This seat is heated, it's cooled, it's finished in leather that suggests it comes from something like a Limited rather than a Tremor. This leather and the stitching is very, very nice in here. Speaking of getting in here, this does have a 1-inch lift compared to a regular F-150. Which means I definitely have to use the running boards to climb up in here because I'm short and have short legs. But again, once I'm here, very happy, and it's not too much of a step up into this thing. And when you're here, you have such a commanding view of the road. Visibility is fantastic. tall glass all around, large outboard mirrors, and of course you have a suite of cameras and sensors for your parking lot adventures. In terms of spaciousness, it's an F-150. What did you expect? There's abundant room here in the first row as well as the second row. Lots of innovative storage space all around, and in general, it's a very well-considered cabin. Ford still believes in buttons, and thankfully the climate controls are all physical here. And for me, after a week in another car that had all of those controls hidden behind the touchscreen, this seems like a small act of kindness. Even in 2026, there are multiple ways to connect your phone to this F-150, whether it's wired or wireless. And under here, this is where the wireless charger resides. So you can wirelessly charge your phone, or you can connect it via USB. Choice is yours. Plus, I have to mention, Ford has worked on phone connectivity, so it is seamless. Fords are very well sorted in that regard, and I think they realize that all of their customers have smartphones and they expect them to work flawlessly in their vehicle. Fit and finish is one of those things that Ford has mastered, and given that this is a high volume truck, I'm not surprised. Panel gaps are perfect. Materials are all fantastic, seem very, very durable. And even in this Tremor, where they're using different trims to spice things up, everything here feels well considered and, like I said, very durable. And here's another telltale sign this is well screwed together. This has a lot of automotive journalist miles, which are not the kindest. And whether we're on the worst of Toronto roads or doing some off-roading, there's never been a rattle or a squeak in this cabin. The cabin and all the features here are excellent. It's probably the last thing an F-150 is trying to sell you. There's 2 kilowatts of the Pro Power Onboard, which you can use to power a job site or a tailgate party. Most owners use it exactly once during a blackout, and then they have the opportunity to briefly feel like the smartest person on the street. And come on, you know you would, I would too. And if you use your truck properly, there's a trailer brake controller, the Pro Trailer feature, all kinds of things to make your truck life so much easier. If this episode gave you something more than you get from a brochure or a press release, hit like. It tells YouTube to share this with other people like you interested in an episode like this. Takes just a second. That's what the Tremor told me after a week behind the wheel. Here's what owners are saying after months or years with a Tremor in their driveway, and the forums tell a slightly different story. Owners figured this out without help from the brochure. The 402A is the one with the Torsen and the high-lock case. The 401A has the look, the lift, and the talking points, but not the hardware that makes the less expensive Tremor interesting. And it seems the forum splits into 2 camps: pay Ford for the whole bundle, or buy the lesser truck and try to build your way back into the one you wanted. On fuel consumption, they're specific, where reviews can be vague, and to be fair, even after a few days behind the wheel of this Tremor, I don't know where my mileage average is going to end up for this test. Owners say on the highway expect low 20s, one log 21.5 on a trip. In town or a headwind, 11 to 13 miles per gallon. The 36-gallon tank is the heartfelt apology for the 373 gears and the all-terrains. Tires are the first real expense, and owners are very blunt about it. These factory grabber generals are a 4-ply all-terrain with thin sidewalls, and the forums are filled with owners swapping them out early for something with more meat. It's the first running cost the window sticker never mentions. Owners are also reporting minor annoyances with the transmission, but it's not what you think. They report a clunk when stopping or a hard downshift, and Ford narrowed the service bulletin to older trucks, so a dealer finds no codes and calls it normal. A real clunk gets called fine, and this particular tester has lots of automotive journalist miles, and there are 0 issues with the transmission. And let's address one myth from the forums before the comments here fill with them. The cam phaser rattle that dogs Ford's name was an old turbo V6 problem. This V8 isn't showing it. Anyone swearing that Coyote still ticks is quoting a 2018 thread. None of it is the engine's fault. Owners keep the V8 for the sound and live with the rest, which leaves the one question. And that's whether all this hardware is worth the price. If you own one of these or have some quality seat time in one of these, let me know what I got right and what I got wrong in the comments, because real-world ownership experiences are much more valuable than anything I can learn in a week-long press loan, and I always read those comments. If you've been following along, I think it was last year we drove the STX with FX4, and that presents an interesting argument. That truck does most of what a backroad F-150 buyer expects for about 30 grand less. And you can walk into the Ford store and buy exactly that, no bundle required. But this Tremor has hardware that you can't get in an STX, the Torsen diff and the high lock transfer case. The hardware is legitimate. Whether you're going to use it or not is another question. I think it comes down to whether your life contains enough off-road terrain to put all of this legit hardware to use. Otherwise, it just becomes expensive hardware you can tell your friends about at the next tailgate party. The truck that exposes this one isn't the Raptor, it's another Tremor with the 402B package sitting on the same lot. It has the Torsen, the high lock case, the V8 on the order sheet, and the leather for $6,900 less. Everything the badge promises is in that truck. The high package piles on the stereo, the bumpers, the tow gear, all good and all optional to the off-road story. If you're here for the hardware, the smart money orders the 402B and skips this one. The Raptor bits are real, as is the V8 the Raptor walked away from, and the receipt is this option package. The buyer this trim makes sense for is pretty narrow, somebody who wanted the leather, the stereo, and the bumpers anyway, and treats the driveline as a bonus, not the reason. But I think that buyer is pretty rare, rarer than a Corvette owner who doesn't wear New Balances. That's the F-150 Tremor. Subscribe if you want to see more episodes like this. Don't if you don't. Comments are open if you disagree, and if you want to help fund more of these, the link to the merch store is here. See you on the next one.